The transmission came in waves of harmonic frequencies, a precise and diplomatic tone embedded in the data stream. The Velthari had arrived. They were not conquerors, not marauders, but scholars and diplomats. For millennia, they had guided lesser civilizations into the Galactic Federation, offering peace, knowledge, and prosperity. They had studied Earth from afar, deemed it promising, and now they would extend the hand of interstellar cooperation. Their descent was smooth, controlled. The jungle stretched beneath them, green and pulsing with life. It was humid, the atmosphere dense, but their suits adapted. The landing zone had been selected carefully, an isolated section of dense rainforest, away from human interference, a place where they could observe the planet's biosphere before formal introductions. The first step onto Earth was cautious but confident. Their leader, High Diplomat Saravath, took in the vibrant ecosystem. The air, rich in oxygen, carried an overwhelming variety of scents. This world was alive in a way most planets were not. They cataloged the towering flora, the distant hum of unseen creatures. Their sensors picked up thousands of life forms, many large enough to pose theoretical threats. A chime in Saravath's earpiece. A scout, distant from the main group, had detected movement. He turned just in time to see a blur. Sleek, black-spotted fur, muscle coiled into lethal motion. The impact was immediate. The jaguar's claws sank into the scout's suit, piercing reinforced layers of composite material as if they were cloth. There was a strangled cry. Stun rifles discharged in rapid succession, lighting up the jungle with bursts of blue. The predator yowled and fled, but not before leaving its mark. The Velthari gathered around their injured comrade. The suit had been breached. The biogel layer meant to prevent bacterial infections was failing, overwhelmed by the sheer density of Earth's microbial life. Medics worked quickly, but the scout trembled. Their bodies were not meant for this level of bacterial assault. Saravath felt unease coil within him. Then came the second attack. The first scouts had been crouched near a cluster of vines, scanning plant samples. They did not realize the vines were teeming with bullet ants. The first sting was dismissed as an inconvenience, until the neuroreceptors in the Velthari brain registered the pure, unfiltered agony. A choked scream echoed through the jungle. The second scout staggered back, clutching his limb as if it were melting. The pain receptors in his nervous system overloaded, convulsing his body against his will. Panic, true panic. A creature smaller than a child's finger had brought a trained diplomat to his knees. The Velthari retreated, blasters drawn, yet the jungle pressed in. Mosquitoes swarmed. The humidity thickened. The dense, breathing forest suddenly felt like a predator itself. Then, a warning cry. Another scout collapsed mid-step, his bio-suit flashing red. A rapid venom scan revealed the culprit, Bothrop's asper. The pit viper's fangs had punctured the suit's outer layer. The alien system was unprepared for the neurotoxic breakdown happening within him. Despite his species' advanced medicine, his limbs locked, respiratory functions began to fail, and his heartbeat spiked erratically. Saravath issued the command, evacuate. Now, they scrambled back to the shuttle, dragging the wounded. Trees rustled above, unseen creatures watching from the canopy. The jungle had tested them, and they had failed. The Velthari ship lifted off, escaping the green abyss that had nearly devoured them whole. Inside, the injured were stabilized barely. The venom had been neutralized, but not before wreaking havoc on their biology. Their suits were in tatters, their bodies marked with deep bruises, welts, and scars. No world had ever attacked them like this. No world had ever fought back. Saravath stood in the medbay, gazing at the trembling form of the scout, still recovering from the bullet ant's venom. It had taken 4 full sedative doses to stop the pain. He swallowed hard, then turned to the research division. "We were unprepared," he admitted. The lead scientist looked grim. "It's not just the predators," she said. "It's everything. The climate, the insects, the microbes. This planet's entire ecosystem is optimized for survival. It does not tolerate weakness. A long silence. Then Saravath made a decision. We relocate. The jungle was a mistake, but Earth was vast. They would find a stable region, a place less hostile, less teeming with life, a place where their technology would not fail them. They pulled up planetary data, deserts, arid landscapes, a place where life was sparse. They chose Australia. The Velthari landed in what they believed to be one of Earth's most stable environments. The desert stretched for miles, barren and unyielding. There were no towering trees concealing predators, no suffocating humidity. The land was dry, open, and seemingly predictable. They set up a temporary base, confident that their technology would compensate for the lack of moisture in the air. Their suits adjusted to the heat, but discomfort lingered. The sun bore down relentlessly, and their cooling systems worked overtime. A few of them reported dizziness, their bodies struggling to retain hydration in the arid atmosphere. Still, it was better than the jungle. Then, the first problem surfaced. Their external sensors registered rapid ground movement. A scouting drone was sent out and quickly relayed disturbing footage. Something beneath the sand was moving fast. A monitor lizard erupted from the ground, snatching the drone midair with jaws powerful enough to crush bone. The drone's emergency failsafe activated, delivering a high-voltage shock. The lizard convulsed but did not die. It shook off the electric pulse and devoured the drone whole. It was an unsettling discovery. They had assumed the desert was lifeless, yet it harbored creatures resilient enough to shrug off their defensive measures. The security team suggested deploying energy barriers. But before the discussion could continue, another alert sounded. A Velthari researcher, studying rock formations, collapsed without warning. His vital signs spiked: extreme tachycardia, respiratory distress. His suit identified multiple puncture wounds. Medical analysis revealed funnel-web spider venom coursing through his bloodstream. They administered anti-venom, but the biological damage was already severe. Their nervous system did not process venom the same way humans did. The neurotoxin had triggered an internal breakdown. His limbs locked, his body seizing violently as his immune system fought a battle it could not win. They placed him in a stasis pod, uncertain if he would survive. Tensions rose. Their technology could withstand hostile environments, yet Earth bypassed their defenses with terrifying efficiency. Every assumption they made about stability, about predictability, was wrong. The temperature climbed higher. Their cooling units reached critical strain. The desert's heat was relentless, its fluctuations drastic. Then a new threat emerged, not from a predator, not from venom, but from the very land itself. The wind shifted abruptly. What had been a steady, scorching breeze turned into something else. The base's AI detected atmospheric instability. The warning came too late. A sandstorm erupted across the horizon, moving at a speed they had not accounted for. The wind howled, carrying debris sharp enough to shred through reinforced plating. Their ship's external sensors failed within seconds, blinded by the storm. Inside, the Velthari struggled to keep the base functional. Power levels fluctuated, instruments overheated, and communication with the orbiting fleet flickered in and out. They had encountered planetary storms before, but none this sudden, none this violent. A distress beacon was activated, their ship's shields engaged at maximum output, forming an energy dome around the base. The storm raged outside, sand and wind slamming against the barriers. Minutes stretched into hours. The storm refused to pass. Then something even worse happened. A shockwave registered from beneath them. Seismic activity, a pressure shift in the Earth's crust. Their AI issued an immediate evacuation warning. The Velthari barely had time to react before the ground lurched violently beneath their feet. A sinkhole began to form, swallowing sections of their landing site. The ship tilted, its stabilizers struggling to compensate. Panic spread. The desert was not stable. The planet itself was shifting, alive in a way they could not comprehend. A sudden crack split the ground. The Velthari leaped into action, abandoning their research equipment. The base was collapsing, the storm still howling, the planet refusing to let them exist in peace. With no other choice, the evacuation order was given. The ship's engines roared, lifting off just as the ground fractured beneath them, swallowing what remained of their outpost. Silence filled the cabin as they reached orbit. The Velthari, battered and shaken, reviewed the data. Earth was not just dangerous. It was actively hostile to their presence. Every environment tested them. Every attempt at control was met with resistance. Their technology, so advanced it had shaped entire worlds, was rendered useless against the chaos of Earth. The High Command gathered. For the first time in their long history, they admitted defeat. But they could not leave without understanding one final thing. If the planet was this merciless, how had its dominant species survived? They had underestimated Earth's brutality. But what baffled them most was humanity's endurance. How had they thrived in a world where nature itself was a predator? The Velthari needed to observe them directly, to witness how they navigate a planet that had nearly destroyed an advanced species in days. They chose a human city, one of the largest, teeming with millions of individuals. It was a calculated risk, but necessary. They deployed cloaked drones, blending into the electromagnetic noise of human infrastructure. Their first observation was startling. Humans moved through their environment as if they did not fear it at all. Even in extreme weather, they adapted seamlessly. In temperatures that had strained Velthari suits, humans wore thin layers of fabric, seemingly unbothered. In heavy storms, they barely adjusted their pace, heads down, hands in pockets, as if the chaos around them did not exist. Then came the true shock. A construction worker fell from a significant height. The Velthari expected immediate medical intervention, perhaps a rescue team. Instead, the human stood up, shook himself off, and climbed back to work, grumbling. No biogel layer, no advanced nanites, just bone and muscle absorbing an impact that should have caused serious damage. A new hypothesis formed. Humans were biologically adapted to endure injury at absurd levels. They reviewed historical data, searching for verification. The records confirmed it. Humans routinely suffered wounds that should have crippled them, yet they survived. An individual was recorded participating in a marathon on a fractured leg. Another walked miles with a punctured lung. A human soldier from their past had taken multiple rounds to the chest and continued fighting. Their ability to absorb pain, to function through trauma, was unprecedented. More troubling was their response to threats. A wildlife incident in a rural zone showed a man fending off a large predatory cat with nothing but a knife. Another punched a shark in the face to escape its jaws. Even without weapons, they refused to submit. The Velthari found recordings of extreme survival cases. A human who cut off his own limb to escape entrapment. A pilot who crash-landed in a frozen wasteland and walked for days without food or proper clothing. These were not anomalies. The data suggested this resilience was standard across their species. Yet, their most chilling trait was not physical. It was their attitude. In controlled environments, when faced with catastrophic injury, starvation, or environmental collapse, humans did something unthinkable. They laughed. Footage showed humans in dangerous conditions, joking about their situation. A man with a shattered arm telling medical staff he'd had worse Mondays. A rescue team stranded in the Arctic casually betting on who would freeze first. A woman, moments after surviving a deadly fall, laughing through broken teeth. The Velthari could not comprehend it. Pain tolerance was one thing, but humor in the face of suffering? That was a level of psychological resilience they had never encountered. It changed the mission parameters entirely. The Velthari had come to uplift humanity, to offer them a place in the Galactic Federation. But now they realized a hard truth. Humanity did not need protection. They needed containment. If these beings were ever given the means to expand beyond their planet, if they were unleashed upon the stars, they would survive anything. adapt to anything, overcome anything, and they would do it with a smirk and a one-liner. The Velthari had seen enough. Earth was not a planet to be tamed, and humanity was not a species to be guided. Their original plan, to extend diplomatic relations, to welcome this world into the Galactic Federation, was no longer an option. The risks were too great. But leaving wasn't enough. Humanity's potential for survival meant they wouldn't remain on their planet forever. They would find their way into the stars, whether the Velthari allowed it or not. It was inevitable. The only question was when. A high-level council meeting was held aboard the fleet's command vessel. The data was laid out in full. The environmental brutality, the biological resilience, the psychological instability that let them laugh in the face of death. Every factor pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity was too dangerous to integrate. Some argued for quarantine, lock the system down, deploy observation satellites, ensure humanity never leaves. But the problem was time. Humanity's rapid technological progress suggested they would develop interstellar travel on their own, without assistance. It might take centuries, but it would happen. Others proposed preemptive action, a strategic strike, neutralize the species before they became a threat, a clean, efficient planetary sterilization. It had been done before with aggressive species that pose galactic risks. It would be easy. Their orbital weapons could turn Earth into a barren rock within hours. But that was a problem. The jungle had nearly killed them. The desert had swallowed them. The planet itself had resisted their presence at every turn. If they attacked, Earth might not go quietly. And then there were the humans themselves. Wiping out a species that could walk off injuries that would cripple other life forms was a logistical nightmare. A species that adapted to every hardship, that turned suffering into humor, that refused to submit to anything. Even if they crushed major population centers, survivors would remain. And those survivors would be angry. The Velthari had seen what humans did to each other in war. Entire cities reduced to rubble, continents scarred, weapons designed for nothing but destruction. And that was when they were fighting themselves. If they united against a common enemy, if they realized they were being attacked by an outside force, the war would never end. They would crawl out of the wreckage, rebuild from the ashes, find a way to retaliate. It might take decades, centuries, but humanity never let an enemy go unpunished. And if they won, if they somehow survived and reached the stars after an attempted extermination, they would come for everyone. The Velthari had faced many threats. None had ever frightened them. Until now, the Council reached a final decision. Humanity would be left alone. No contact. No interference. No attempts to influence their development. The fleet would depart, and all records of Earth would be sealed. The galaxy would remain unaware of what lurked on this blue planet. And with that, the Velthari left. Their mission was over. Their warning unspoken. But as they jumped to faster-than-light speed, one unshakable truth remained. One day, humanity would reach the stars. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same.